Hi, and welcome back to Soaring Profits, live Thursday night, 9 p.m. Tonight, we have a wonderful guest and good friend of mine for many, many years. I met Phil a long time ago when I was hanging out with, way back in the day when I actually hung out with musicians. And Phil is a fabulous musician who has continued on for so many years because we're young men. So it wasn't that long ago that he was playing in the bars, and I was there with a bunch of friends watching him and having a beer or two. He's traveled all over the East Coast. He did a tour through the East Coast, and while he was in the East Coast, he traveled in a VW van because he's a big VW van guy. And he even was in a magazine out of the UK, was it? Out of the UK, and they did a piece, a small 2-page piece on it back when. So a magazine is like this book of paper that we used to look at with pictures, and there was little writings. It was wonderful. But yeah, no, Phil has done so many things for our community around here. He's raised money. He's been part of different nonprofit like theater groups that have helped special needs people. He has raised money for countless different organizations. He sings with his partner Glenn. We'll pull up the website later. With his partner Glenn, he does tours with elderly people singing good old songs, and he even does a puppet show for kids with some music. And then for you more tyrannical people that like it a little bit hardcore, they do like some Irish music, mostly in pubs and stuff like that, and it's beautiful. I know during the pandemic, he at St. Patty's Day he did a live stream, and it was like very uplifting for everyone. I watched the whole thing, and it was beautiful. It was nice. All my friends were able to connect, and we were drinking together, having a good old time while he and his friends played. It was lovely. So Phil's initiative right now for the last 15 years, he's been doing what's called the ugly sweater. My brain just stopped. Phil, what's it called?
It's an ugly Christmas sweater party, and it's tied into a food drive.
Yeah, and it's for one of our local places here that needs some canned goods and noodles and stuff like that. And so you go in with your ugliest sweater, and he and some friends play some live music, and we get really drunk and wear ugly sweaters. And I just think it's a beautiful thing, all these wonderful things that Phil does, and it's such a pleasure. We told him, I think I told him Sunday, hey man, we have an opening, and you're on, and he went, okay. So here we are. So Phil, can you tell us a little bit about the tacky sweater? That's what it is, tacky sweater party.
Okay, yeah. First of all, thanks for having me. I love the title, Soaring Profits.
Thanks.
Um, so
Thanks,
congrats
Rob.
on this.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for having me. So the tacky sweater thing started probably about 15 years ago. I used to have a regular spot at the Holiday Inn in Peterborough. They used to have live music on Friday nights in the bar during like the fall and winter months, and I was one of the four guys on the Friday nights, and they were complaining to me that they weren't getting enough people to come in to see the live music, and it was really never a problem on my Friday night, but apparently, some of the other nights it was pretty quiet. So I suggested to them that maybe they needed to sort of big things up a little and make it more than just the live music. And of course, and it was funny. Well, they're asking me, well, what would you do? And I said, well, you could have Christmas was coming up, so I said you could have like a tacky Christmas sweater party, and you could tie it into something like a food drive. And of course, they were just like, this sounds incredible. And I'm like, well, it could be. I said this might get people motivated to come out more. So it started there, and of course, it was huge right off the bat. And luckily, and it's a cool shtick. Everyone likes to go out at Christmas, and the tacky sweater thing is just exploding. And when you tie it into live music, it's sort of like the perfect mix. So we did it there for the first few years, and we'd always fill a barrel full of food. But then we've kind of moved it around, right, just to different locations. And we had a 2-year break there because of COVID. But the last place we had it at, I think, was the Twisted Wheel, which
Oh yeah.
unfortunately isn't there anymore. It's a super cool bar.
Mm.
Anyway, that's another story. I won't get into it. But this year, so it's the theme's the same. We're going to have it at Jethro's, which is it was formerly the Sapphire Room. And as much as I miss that old bar, the Sapphire Room, this new place, Jethro's, I don't know if you guys have been. It's super cool inside. It's got a really cool vibe. I've already seen a few concerts there. And, the intent was to bring, it's a space for showcasing live music, not just local musicians, but, the last concert I saw was two of the guys from Lowest of the Low, which is a phenomenal band that was quite big in the 90s. So they're going to host it for us. And there's going to be live music with my musical partner, Glenn Caritas. We're bringing on another really talented percussionist, Ron Curvin. He does East Coast. That's kind of what we do. But then we've also got Chris Boy, who's a local DJ who's going to spin tunes in between. So it's going to be I think it's going to be pretty awesome.
That's cool. Yeah, no, it's a great venue. It kind of reminds me of the Aaron, which was before the Sapphire Lounge, where it just showcases live talent so wonderfully that and the owner, I think she was a musician at one time. She's getting such, like, every time I go, it's like a different kind of band. Like the one time I went, it was like old Hank Williams kind of music, and then it was like a bluesy one. And then the last time I went was more like the Red Hot Chili Peppers. It was phenomenal. And it's always like really good, just interesting music. It's awesome. Yeah. And then they throw in like one or two songs you can sing, but a lot of it is their own music. Yeah. So Phil, when you were traveling the East Coast, what prompted you to do that? Like, how do you set up something like that, like a tour in the East Coast?
Well, we were very busy pre-COVID, but when we did that, the East Coast trip, literally like the year before, that it was a summer trip. Obviously, it was through the month of August, and I think it was probably about 9 or 10 years ago now. The year before, we were just sort of looking on the map and sort of using the internet to find places to play. And then we split it up and called people. And so, we played at like some of the parks out there. We played at some nature camps. We played at the Atlantic Burn Camp. It's a camp for kids that have had burn accidents. That was interesting. I was a little nervous going into that, but of course the Volkswagen. Sorry,
because you smoke.
No, I didn't know what.
That's a terrible joke. That's a terrible joke.
Yeah, no, I was nervous about like how badly burned some of these kids might be, but when we pulled up in my old VW microbus, the kids just swarmed it. And it became all about just who are these two nutters from Ontario that are coming out here to do music, right? So that was interesting. And it turned out to be an exceptionally good show. We played at a few pubs. We played at this place called, what the hell is the name of it now? I'm getting old. The Alberton Crown in Alberton, and this was in PEI, and it's the other end of the island, from Charlottetown. And when I phoned this guy, he said, "How did you get my number?" And I said, "Well, I found it on your website." He goes, "Okay, great." And so I asked him, I said, "Why?" He goes, "Well, I've only been open for about 2 weeks." And I said, "Well, that's cool." I said, "How about the first 2 weeks?" But he said, "Phenomenal." And then he tells me he used to be in graphic design, but he decided he wanted to open up a bar. So anyway, there was a lot of back and forth, but we finally, nailed down a date. It had to be a Friday or Saturday night. This had to tie into all the other gigs we were doing.
Right.
So we had a night there. It was jam packed. Not that it was a huge place, but people were dancing on the tables. It was insane. And it was probably one of the best shows we've ever done. And of course, this guy's like, you have to come back. And we're like, well, we're kind of on a one-way trip. And well,
It's a long
maybe next year. Anyway, so this was the sort of thing we did. We called places, and we ended up being almost too busy because we didn't have a lot of downtime. But we were in the Cape Breton Highlands, the park there. We played. I didn't think the Volkswagen was going to make it. I don't know if you guys have ever been out there. It's stunning, but it's crazy mountains, right? And this old Volkswagen. I remember telling Glenn. He's like, "Well, I think we might be late to this next show." And I said, "Dude." He said, "You got to step on it." I said, "It's right to the shag, man. Like, this is like a 1970s VW Mike. Like, it's not a Porsche." And I said, "Who cares if we're late?" I said, "They'll understand that once they see what we show up in, they're going to be glad we're even there at all." Right?
You risked your lives to get here, boys.
Yeah. So anyway, that was a stellar time too. So anyway, the whole trip was arranged the year before, and then it was executed that following summer, and it was phenomenal. Like I said, we ended up in a Volkswagen magazine out of Britain.
Wow.
So yeah.
Pretty cool.
That's amazing. So, like, were you just like sitting around? Did you launch an album, or like, what would motivate you to like, this is what I want to do now? Like, I know you've done a lot of things in your life, helped inventors, done all sorts of things, but in this particular case, like, what motivated you to want to travel? Because there's places that you could be in Ontario, which would be much easier. Probably, you'd be able to play as many bars in Ontario. What motivated you to go out that way?
Well, it was actually, I think it was Glenn's idea. And, the idea was we both wanted to see the East Coast, but, rather than just, drive out there and, spend a lot of money,
Right.
we thought maybe we could make it like a working holiday. And, Glenn's very focused, much more than I am. And so he's kind of like the one that's like, okay, let's do this. This is what we need to do. And, I just follow along. So, yeah, we just thought it would be a great way to see the East Coast. So we want to go back and do Newfoundland as a separate trip, which we still might do. He's got a small child now, and he's married, so that, who knows? But anyway, yeah, it's just part of what we do. We do a lot of festivals in the summertime. We're traveling all over the place. We were talking to the Calgary Stampede about possibly going out there. There's Folk on the Rocks and Yellowknife. That's another one. But then, when COVID came, that sort of put the kibosh on everything. But this is just sort of organically what we like to do is travel and play music. And we do a lot of stuff in Ontario. We were at Mariposa Folk Festival last year. We've been there 3 years running now. All kinds of folk festivals around Ontario. So yeah, we're busy. It's nice.
So Phil, it seems like you got kind of like 3 different aspects here. First of all, how did you end up with a bunch of puppets?
Well, the puppets are Glenn's thing. So he always did children's entertainment, right? So There's the website. Look at you guys. You're so technically savvy. This is awesome. So we figured early on the best way to keep busy in music or entertainment or whatever is to be able to sort of tick all the boxes. So Glenn's a puppeteer. I'm not really at all. But I do the music while he does the puppeteering. So that's great for kids shows. We do a lot of seniors homes. And then of course we have our East Coast and modern music thing for like parties and bars and stuff like that. So you'll notice the 3 different names. So the Paddling Puppeteers, that's the kids shows. The Bill Baileys, that's a popular song from around the 1920s. That's our seniors homes and stuff. And then Laggin' and Derelict is our East Coast thing. And Laggin' and Derelict is what will be at the Tacky Sweater Party on Friday, December 9th with Ron Curvin. So, yeah, so that's just yeah, that's sort of how it all came to be, and that's what's kept us busy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that looks awesome, man. That's great that you've really turned this into like a budding business. Like I know COVID has slowed you down a bit, but like so if like there's musicians out there, like you've been at this maybe for a year or two, uh, what would you suggest they do? Like, so you can't jump out. Like, it's a lot different now, right? Like, have you been in social media or like? It seems like the way people get founded now musically is through like YouTube or TikTok or something like that. Um, are you finding? Are you using that medium, or are you finding that's not a thing for you? Or
Well, you know what we did in the past. There's nothing like the live experience. And I mean, who knows where things are going now with COVID and stuff. I've heard all kinds of crazy stuff, but certainly we did it begrudgingly because we prefer the live experience.
right,
So it's funny, like when COVID first hit um, a few years back, we did a show. It used to be called the Garnet, and it's now the Crook and the Coffer. And I
okay,
remember it was just the very beginning, and this was sort of a warm up to St. Patrick's Day. And you could sort of see the writing on the wall. And I remember talking to Glenn and saying, should we do this gig or should we call it off? Because everyone just sort of felt this sort of dark cloud over their heads, and it just, and we sort of were like apprehensive, but thought, well, no one's told us we can't. So if people want to come, they come. If they don't, they don't. So there we were. Everyone was trying to have a good time, but I'm telling you, the mood was shit because really, everyone's thinking in the back of their minds like, we're all gonna die. You're right. I mean, at the
right.
very beginning, that's
Everyone,
the picture that I sort of envisioned. But we did that show, and it was okay. But it really, the mood was people came, but everyone sort of felt in the back of their heads that bad things might come. So then, right after that, St. Patrick's Day, March 17th. It was about a week away from that show. And, I had it in my head that we were supposed to play, I think, at the Publican House or something. Of
okay.
course, that got canceled. So I said, maybe we could do one of these Facebook event things, right? Like a live stream
Mm,
deal. And none of us are overly technical. Um, But I thought I'll figure it out and I'll just put the word out there and we'll see what happens. So that very first show was phenomenal,
yeah,
right? That it was incredible. And I mean, the videos have had thousands of hits on them now, which
yeah,
it was in my living room for God's sakes, right? But it was just very spontaneous. And I remember that neighbors popped down. My friends Shane and Amanda from Green Eyewear brought bugles down and left them at the door,
yeah,
and then like you said, everyone tuned in, and there was this real sense of just being together with everybody, and it was really new to us, right?
Yeah.
But it just worked, and I was like, this, it's not bad. This is pretty good. But then after that, we tried to do a Canada Day show, and it was just well, it's summer in Canada. If you're at
yeah.
your cottage, I'd rather
It,
be on the dock than in front of a computer screen. Like
that's right.
so, that sort of tanked. And then we did a few subsequent St. Patty's shows. We did one up at the Mount because Glenn works up there. He teaches with Rowan Tree. So we just took one of the rooms. But it just that first one was sort of magical, and
Yeah,
everything else just didn't. We have a video on our website of the show we did. We hired Jeremy Kelly to film it up at the Mount, but thrill's gone. You
Right.
yeah.
know,
Well, no,
Jeremy's film was great.
I
What's
remember
that?
watching it and it popped up on my Facebook, just kind of being in the area here. And I had known you, I'd met you before, kind of like that, and tuned in, didn't know what was going on, anything. And you guys killed it. And it really was kind of just a perfect storm of why that just took off. It was all the things that I think people really needed in
Yeah,
that time. They had just started with all the COVID stuff. It was just such a cluster. And then you got these two guys that were just really enjoying themselves, singing some Irish tunes, And in our community here is, the profiteers that watch us, they know where we live, and it's a pretty Irish town. So when you get drunk Irishmen sitting around the computer yelling and hooting and hollering, you're having a good time. So
yeah. No, it was a fun time in the comments. Like I was enjoying like commenting, and you're chatting with friends and people you didn't know and joking around, and like I was at home singing along, and I'm sure everyone else was raising a few drinks, and it was one of those moments where you've kind of for the first time in a long time didn't feel alone. It was a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Well, we were drinking quite. Well, I shouldn't say we. I was drinking quite a bit. The other guys were having a few beers. But yeah, and it was very sort of. It was just trial and error. Like I'm like, I hope this works. Is this thing on? And then people would comment, "Yeah, you're rolling. Like, get to it, right?" So I think there was just the newness of it for us, and I don't know. There was just. I remember feeling like we were in my living room, and I just sort of felt like there was an energy there, almost like the same kind of energy you get when you have a good live performance. Right. So, yeah, I just remember thinking, this is all right. This is pretty cool. And I think everybody shared that enthusiasm. And, people are talking to each other through the chat. And Carolyn Key, she was kind of moderating stuff. That's a friend of ours she used to live in Toronto. They just moved to the East Coast, of all places. And it just organically and magically came together, and it was that was phenomenal. That was the next best thing to some of the live shows we've done.
No doubt.
We had the Weber brothers on here, and we were sort of talking about pre-COVID, what concerts were like during COVID when you could actually do it, but there were like all these restrictions. Everyone had to wear a mask. You couldn't move. You couldn't breathe. You couldn't like dance. And did you do any concerts during that time where it was like, yeah, you can come out and sing, but you have to have the plexiglass in front of you, and everyone has to sit. No one can like sing along. And did you do any of those?
Yeah. So we do seniors homes, right?
Yeah.
And I won't name the home, but they're like, when we got there, they said, "Did you bring your plexiglass?" And I pretended like I'm reaching into my pockets. I'm like, "No, I forgot it, man." And they're like, "Okay, no wind instruments." Well, that's all Glenn plays. Like not all he plays. He does string instruments, but he plays the tin whistle, the harmonica. He's a phenomenal harmonica player. Most of his stuff is that. And you can't play those. And I'm like, come on, like that's, just puts all the weight on me. So we went through some of that stuff with those restrictions, but for the most part, we did a show at one of the homes. We played out on their deck and put the speakers inside the windows, so while they were having dinner, they could hear us play.
Right. Yeah.
It's amazing, really, how people came up with workarounds during that time. Like when you think back for the 2 years that everything was, and as crazy as it was, there was some ingenuity that came out of people to get things done. And when you look at it now, if they applied that to their everyday, it'd be a pretty cool. I'm sure their outcomes would be pretty outrageous, right? So,
yeah. Well, we appreciated that because again, when you're working musicians, like, a gig's a gig. So, and it was their idea. They said, "This is what we'd like you to do." It was St. Patrick's Day, and luckily it was warm enough. It was March 17th, whatever it was, a couple of years ago. And it was beautiful, sunny day, and on this back patio, it was great. So there we were. I remember I looked in one of the windows, and I see this elderly woman going like this. Maybe she didn't really like the tunes or whatever, but yeah, we did some work. What's that?
She was English.
Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, we did some workarounds and we got through it, and everything's fine. Now, this past summer, I started a new job, but we've had to refuse more gigs than we could take because we've been inundated with, stuff. But it's like, you can only do so many, and especially if it's Canada Day, that day gets filled solid. So it's like first come, first serve, or whoever pays the most money, right?
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
So the body's not cheap, okay?
Right.
The vodka is not cheap, and it is one of my
Tito's
favorites.
is expensive, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Do you get sponsored by them? I'm just asking. We're
What's that?
looking. Do you get sponsored by them? I'm just asking. We're
Uh,
looking for a vodka sponsor, so you give them a good
I
word.
wish they don't even know we exist, but I'll tell you, I should have shares in that company. Yeah.
Yeah, the still in the back room though, that's the tough one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's next for Phil? Like, what do you have some stuff upcoming besides the tacky sweater? That's a big event that you're probably like concentrating on right now. But and you have like this golf tournament maybe coming up. But other than that, do you have anything else?
Sculpture. Yeah, no, the sweater party, I'm really excited about that. And you know what? This is all volunteer. I want to just talk a bit more about this.
Sure.
Everyone's like Chris Boyd, he DJ'd it when it was at the Twisted Wheel. It was so good. He's really good at what he does, and he volunteers his time. We do the same thing. I get a lot of Volkswagen. My VW bus friends come from out of town. They stay at the Holiday Inn and they come to the show and we fill the barrel. So I'm excited that that's going to happen again because it's been a while. And we did say the date, right? It's December 9th.
December 9th.
It's a little later this time because they have not an opening band. They have a band playing from 7 to 9. And I hear they're quite good. I forget who it is now. But then we're on from 10 till 1. So you could come earlier if you want, but if you're so inclined to come, please do. Bring something non-perishable. That's a great thing. So that's the immediate thing in the future. And then other than that, I'm a bus driver now at City of Peterborough. So my whole life is driving city transit. And I do love the gig, but it's doesn't allow for a lot of extracurricular activities.
Yeah.
Well, so with what
driving
you're
around,
doing
it'll
there,
lead me to my next question. Sorry, Pat.
well, yeah, no, that's kind of probably picking up
Yeah.
on the next question is,
Yeah.
with what
Right.
you're doing now, it sounds like, the food bank and kind of the world that we're living in at the moment is a bit of a topsy-turvy one with lots of need out there. Has that always been the way that you've put this together? It's always been through the food bank, or who have you had in the past?
Sorry, I missed a bit of that. What was the question?
Well, so the tacky sweater, you're planning on doing a food drive with that, correct?
Yeah.
Right. So are you doing that for the food bank here in Peterborough, or?
Well, actually, it goes to St. Vincent de Paul.
Okay.
I've got retired teacher friends. I used to be in education before I became a city bus driver, and so I have some retired teacher friends that run it. And
Right.
I mean, the food banks, like they're all amazing. It's just I know these guys and they appreciate it. St. Vincent does great work, but certainly, yeah. And it's funny, like the need, like since it'll be 2 years this December that I've been driving a city bus, and I have the front row seat to what goes on in Peterborough. And I'm telling you, like,
Yeah,
this town has gone to shit. Like, I hate, well, could probably
no, it's
put it in
fair. It's
nice.
a fair assumption. Yeah.
Yep.
The mayor said, I think I might declare a state of emergency. I said, you're kind of late to the party. Like,
2 years.
it's,
Yeah.
it's crazy. And you know what? It's like every day it just seems to get worse. And I don't, not saying I have the answers, but I can tell you, like, people are trying, everyone's trying, there's the tiny home initiative. That's a
Yeah.
cool thing. Glenn and I talked about maybe doing a fundraiser around that. I don't know if you guys saw those. They're like little mini, yeah. So there is stuff that they're thinking about. But yeah, there's a lot that needs to be done. So this is just a small thing, really. It's an excuse to go out and party and get drunk and wear these ridiculous sweaters and do something decent on the side, right? So, but the need in town here is massive. It's absolute. It blows me away how in 2 years, I think we've always struggled. Most cities have, their issues, but right now there's so many homeless people, and it's just, you know, the drugs, the addiction, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
How do you
No,
help?
it's not. It's
What do you
absolutely.
when you're
Go ahead.
driving downtown and you're seeing these people, and obviously, like you're saying, is you have kind of the bird's eye view of this because you're down and you're flying in around and you're doing laps all day long. How do you help them?
How do I what? Sorry.
How do you help them?
Well, I don't know. Well, you know what? On the bus, often, if you see somebody somewhere and they look like maybe they're really not doing so well, like they're passed out, hopefully just passed out, like on the sidewalk or something, we radio the dispatchers and say, "Can you set? We need a wellness check at Stewart and Alma, let's say."
Yeah.
Right, and then the paramedics come, and hopefully they have an overdose. You don't know,
Yeah.
but yeah. So you're always watching and making like if you see anything that where you think, "Oh, this could be an issue," and drivers do all the time. You'll hear it over the radio. You'll hear other drivers say, "Oh, can you get a wellness check to this location?" Right. So, and like I say, I don't know how you like. I mean, we'll do this food drive thing, but it's that's really a drop in the bucket. Like it really comes down to like the whole homelessness thing. We will do a fundraiser for that. But, I wanted to stop and actually get some more info on these little tiny homes that they're proposing, but we'll see. Jeff Leal, he's the mayor that will be coming in, and we'll see. There's some people with some good ideas. And we'll just kind of just try and follow along to help any way we can, right? So.
Well, we interviewed someone from Path. So I ran into Path after church one day, saw the tiny home, met this wonderful woman, and we did a little interview with them and found out a little bit what they're doing. And they're hoping to have 15. Well, they should be almost done. Wasn't it December or something? December 1st, they're gonna have 15 homes down by the Home Hardware or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but what they need is money, is what they've been talking about. Is that a lot of it is that upfront costs and all that stuff. And what I talk about on Soaring Profits is right now, like, because we're at these times where everyone's hurting, like it costs phenomenal amounts of money for meat now. Our groceries have doubled, our gas has doubled, everything. These small drops in the bucket, Phil, that you're talking about, like you're making light of what you're doing. I think they're beautiful. I think if everyone did a small drop, man, we're going to change the world together. And I think that, we all do. I know Soaring Profits right now, we're looking at doing a fundraiser kind of golf tournament thing. We're still in the works trying to figure that out. And I hope the people that are listening to me, because I mention it quite often, get out there. Like, whatever you can do. If you can play music, go play music and raise money. If you're a good negotiator, if you have a business, go join these things, contact them. And I'm hoping that, some of the places that we talk to, like Path, that they get some traction because of the little video that we do, So the little into big things, I think. This discussion we're having right now is because you started the Tacky Sweater Initiative, right? It all kind of rolls into something bigger. What I was going to ask you, which was along the lines of Pat's thing, was I noticed that all of our bus shelters have become homes, like almost tiny homes for homeless people. And it was all summer. Like, people like kind of put their stuff in and they'd build up like more things, and they'd have furniture and all sorts of stuff. Was the bus companies just like, I don't know what you can answer and what you can't, but were the bus companies just kind of ignoring it, allowing it to happen? Was it a generic thing, or were they invited? Like, do you know how all that came down? Because there wasn't a bus shelter in Peterborough that didn't turn into a house.
Yeah, I know. There was one. I'm like, wow. It was right down. They had like the frosted flakes on the dresser, right? They must have just had brekkie, but everyone's got their own take on it. Driving the bus, every now and then you'd hear a driver radio and say, "Hey, the shelter at I don't know, Lansdowne and Goodfellows become a homeless shelter. You got to get someone down there to clean it out." But my take was like, well, where are they supposed to go? Like, it's a crisis. So I mean, it's not like it was ignored, but at the same time, there's a reason they're in there, and so it's a tricky thing, right? So people, as far as transit goes, I mean, they're cognizant of the whole situation, and they would notify, the authorities, the police, and paramedics go down and they do wellness checks, but it's just all part of this crazy mess we're in. And it's like, you know, it's not it's not just the simple answer is it just to evict them, right?
I know.
Someone say, well, now there's people that are afraid to go in there that are waiting for the bus. Well, it sucks, but hey, the bigger problem is why are these people in the shelter, right? And where are they supposed to go? And
Yeah.
so, I mean, my take on all this has always been sort of to try and get to be proactive and get to the root of the problems, right? So yes, the immediate problem is maybe someone wants to sit in a bus shelter and wait for the bus, but there's a homeless person in there sleeping, and they've got all their shit in there. So
Yeah. And
yeah,
how long you're really waiting for the bus? Do you really need to be in there sitting? I guess if
well,
it's raining or something, but
again, I mean, no, I mean, yeah, it'd be nice. It'd be great if people could sit there and wait. If you're an elderly person, there's a bench in these. They all have a little bench.
yeah.
So I'm not saying it would be nice, but like, unfortunately, we're dealing with bigger things now.
Yeah.
So that trumps the other. And I'm not saying, well, you just leave it, and it's too bad. Like, no, but we have to look at that and say, okay, this is all part of the big problem.
Yeah.
We need to figure out a way to get these people out of these bus shelters. Like the tiny home thing might be that, you know what I mean? So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, but there was no definitive way that people dealt with it. I met a few of them that lived in them, and the stories are sort of kind of what you'd expect, right? It's like, drugs, alcohol. Uh, I think that this pandemic really messed with a lot of people mentally. I kind of rolled with everything and I thought, well, we'll just wait and see what happens. But initially, I mean, I remember thinking, oh my God, like where the hell like this could be devastating. And then,
Mhm.
yeah, a few weeks go by, a month, a couple months, and I'm like, okay, it's I'm not saying it was okay, but it wasn't like we're all dying, you know,
Yeah.
one by one. So, I sort of felt like, you do the right things. You put the mask on, you keep your hands clean. I've been vaccinated, 3 times. Got COVID anyway, but it wasn't that bad, probably because I was vaccinated. But, you know, it's one thing to be aware, but it's another thing. Don't let that fear sort of take over your life. But I think a lot of people, they just sort of thought it's the end, it's the beginning of the end. And, they just thought, hey, I drank more than I usually do. Of course, that's not a stretch, but some just maybe took it too
Yeah.
far, or they just couldn't cope and maybe turned to drugs. And so yeah, we got a problem. It's huge. And
I often wonder if it was so Ontario gave it that kind of free money, and
sir,
there wasn't a lot of you didn't there wasn't a lot of restrictions on why you got the money, and you really had nothing to do. So if you were prone to addiction, I think it would increase that, and I often wonder because that's kind of as COVID increased, so did our homeless drug problem. And I often wonder if the free money had kind of a part in it. But I also wonder, like, the cart or the horse, like, what came first? Were they down on their luck, homeless, and then the drug problem arrived? Or did the drug problem cause? Because I'm with you. Like, we have to find, we see all the symptoms. They're sleeping in the bus shelters, they're walking around like zombies. For the most part, most of the homeless people that I've talked to are kind and courteous and nice, but some of them have mental health issues and stuff like that. But I'm with you. Like, just kicking them out and moving them to another place is solving nothing. We really have to come up with a plan. And this tiny home thing, it sounds like they're trying to get the whole package. Like, the interview that we had was that they're interested in getting them off the street into a permanent home, or semi-permanent anyway. That they can feel safe, that they can lock the door, and then you can breathe. And then once you can breathe, you can start to move from there. But for me, I think we really need to, like, look at what is the majority of the problem. How do we stop that? Like, we have a lot of what are they called? Injection sites?
safe injection sites.
Yeah, safe injection
Yeah.
sites, stuff like that. I'm not saying that's the problem, but I have noticed the increase of that. There's been the increase of drugs. I don't know if it correlates. I have no idea. I don't know. What do you think, Pat?
Well, I'm a little bit more conservative than you lads, and I'm a little bit more of going in there and move them out of those places than some people are. But obviously, there is a massive need. I have watched this community that I've lived in most of my life, like Phyllis said, just be absolutely devastated by homelessness, poverty, criminality, addictions, and alcoholism like I've never seen. Like it is beyond a pandemic, the epidemic kind of proportion that it is, and that's where I think the last election that we just had, we interviewed the mayor to be in our community here, Jeff Leal, great guy. James has known his family for a very long time, and I've known Jeff. The issue I think with all of them were all of their plans were how can we give these people more things, right? What are we going to do? Are we going to put more supports for them? Is there going to be more money? Is there going to be more safe injection sites? Kind of going with what we were just talking about. And we have to look at a plan that is kind of a little bit more is here is the foundation. Now choices are going to be made. And I think that goes with anything. I think it goes with parenting. I think it goes with addictions. I think it goes with that. Where I go back to the COVID aspect of this is that there were probably a lot of functional addicts. And then when you have a break in their daily routines, their world gets upheaved, their jobs potentially were lost, all of these things, now they're no longer functional. Now they're just addicts. And their addiction snowballed and it kind of rolled from there. So the 9-to-5 jobs that they were going and doing, and that was, you're 8 hours away from addiction. Now you're 24 hours a day in your addiction. And we've seen criminality. We've seen all the things just kind of roll off of there. So I'm a little bit more of a hard ass when it comes to some of the more social stuff than I certainly know James, but I think Phil too. But we got to do something. Because this is at a point now where politically, I think you're dead in the water if you go in and break up these tent communities. And it's sort of unfortunate that we've branded it that way, that you can't go in and move them on. Where do you move them on to? What does that look like? There's a lot of questions to be answered for sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Phil.
No, I mean it's tough. Like, I come like social work. That's what I took post-secondary.
Right.
And most of my life has been to some degree, working with supporting people in different ways and stuff. It's a mess. It's tricky. I mean, the story is a lot of people came from the Toronto area up here because they were told this is a good spot to be if you're struggling. I don't know. I mean, it's fucked. It's just a mess, and unfortunately, there's no simple answer, and maybe a more hardline approach might be something.
How do you do it? That's my issue, and I've talked about this with a lot of people. I've got a lot of friends that are police officers in the area here, and my father, growing up with his buddies that were all cops, and that it's a very different policing mentality. So, if you're making a 6-figure a year salary as a city of Peterborough police officer, and that's a very comfortable living, in our area, that's a very good job, I would argue, right? Do you want to go down and get spit on by Helen Smith, who you're just going to move her and you're going to go deal with her again in the next 12 hours? So when you're very well paid, you lose the incentive, I think, to go out and kind of rough it up a bit to get outcomes potentially that you might need. And that's where when you're paying a security guard $20 an hour, I've noticed that they're a little bit more formidable with their attitude with some of the downtown situations than officers that are carrying a gun that are making $100,000 a year. Which one's right? I'm not sure. But I sure know that a lot of these guys making $100,000 a year have a status in the community that they're not willing to go and get punched in the face for a guy in a bus shelter.
Well, I think there's also the argument to be made that the guy in the bus shelter is not doing anything. Yeah, he's inconvenienced people sitting there, but he's not, for the most part, most of the homeless people aren't causing problems or doing all the crime that's in the city. You know, like for the most part, they're just trying to live a life, and yeah, maybe they're doing drugs, and they're different than us, and sometimes the conversations are unusual. But if they're not hurting anyone, moving them just seems like you're not solving a problem. You're just going to move them to a different location, and you have the same problem. It makes no sense to move them. They feel, because once they feel stable in a spot and they feel like they're not moving and they're not causing problems, like they're not out there bugging people walking by, yelling at people. They're not leaving their needles all around. I'm not saying they should stay there. What I'm saying is that, okay, well, we don't have to deal with that right now until we find a solution. Because
do you want the bus shelter in front of your house?
I have one down the street, but
do you want it? Like yours is not inhabited.
They're not. No, mine's not inhabited. You're right. But if they're not causing problems, Pat, so they're sitting there every day. They're not causing problems. They say good morning to you.
They are. So at the end of the day, they are. And the reason they are is that, okay, so I want to sell my house now. So I've got a bus shelter half a block down the street. And when the Remax agent pulls up with the Toronto couple that's coming to look at my beautiful home in this community, and the real estate agent drives by and goes, "Oh, quickly, look over there, look at the bird," instead of looking at the bus shelter where she's having a shit in the bus shelter. That is a problem. And I think that's the problem, lads, is I'm totally with you. These people, there's an issue that we have to solve. But now you're infringing on my right to live and have my home and potentially make a business transaction because you're shitting at a bus terminal. Right? Like you have to. Yeah. And that's where I hate to say it, but societal norms and the laws that are on the books need to be enforced. And we had a mayor here in this town. I don't know what your political leanings are, Phil. That was a lump. She was a lump. And when we were dealing with problems, she just went, well. And people were going, God damn it, woman, do something, please. And it allowed it to get where it is now, to this level of just absolute chaos. And I'm hoping that Jeff has an opportunity to come in and do some good things, because I think he's a good man. So we'll see.
Well, I can speak to that. I do feel like she cashed out a while ago.
Oh, yeah.
I think it started when people were criticizing her online. And of course, if you're a politician, once the honeymoon's over, you're like Nickelback. Everyone hates you, right? Yeah. Nothing against Nickelback. I don't think they're that bad, but anyway.
I love them.
Yeah. As far as the police go, we work closely with we don't work closely with them, but we share the same space. Like the bus garage is where the police go to fuel their vehicles and stuff. So I feel like, they're doing the best job they can. They're empathetic, which I feel is the right approach. They're not really, and I agree. I don't think there's a lot of aggression out there. I think they're just sort of trying to deal. And I understand what you're saying. Like, my van has been broken into multiple times over this past summer. The last time my neighbor saw a man and a woman with a crowbar, and they're doing the street, right? But again, these are desperate people. They're not sort of, these sort of smooth criminals going out there trying. I mean, they're just trying to get through every day and fuel the habit and just exist. And you know what? Their problems do become ours. Yeah. It's unfortunate, but that's just the byproduct. Right now, my van, I've emptied the glove box out, the center console, it's wide open. So because I realize there's nothing in there. They break in, they don't steal anything, but they wreck the door, right? So now it's like, please look inside first. I've emptied it out, go somewhere else. So it sucks for sure. But the problem, their problems are now our problems. And so what we need to do, again, we go back to the big picture of maybe it's the tiny homes or something. Something's got to give. Yeah, you're right. Sitting on your laurels, maybe this new mayor is going to be, fully charged up and sort of get things done. And I'll stand behind anything I think that's good. You know, I've heard a lot of people say, I don't go to the shelters because they're terrible and I'd rather be outside. So, um, again, we have to sort of look at everything and decide what's best.
Yeah. Now, Phil, you brought up that experience with having your vehicle broken into, and I go
Yeah.
back, and I can't help but go back to when I was a young man. Like my father, he knew everything that went on our street, right? And if there had been a guy walking down the street with a crowbar, my father would have pulled out a bigger crowbar. And societally, we don't do that anymore. We
Yeah.
take a picture of them and we post it on Facebook, and we're like, if you know these people, please tell them to be more gentle on my car next week. Like
Yeah.
societally, we have lost our balls. I swear to God, I don't know why or how, but there is no doubt in my mind. I had kids. I felt bad afterwards. I had kids. They were playing Nicky Nicky Nine Doors on my house. I live in the West End. I had these kids. They were high school kids. I went out, underwear, chased them all the way down the street. I'm nuts. No one is going to do that shit. But
Yeah.
I think if you had a bunch of neighbors, if you had that community, I think you eliminate a lot of this criminality because you're going out and you're in its face. You're saying, no, I'm not an easy target. I'm now your worst fucking nightmare, pal. And we've got a problem. And I'm not saying you're beating people up or this isn't Batman and Robin I'm talking about. But when you come out there and you pull a guy out of the backseat of your car as he's going through your shit and you go, what are you doing? He's got a very different persona than he does when you're like looking from your Ring camera going, shit. And that's where, and I think a lot of people do it because they are scared. They don't know how to handle this sort of thing.
Well, my neighbor saw this couple with this man and woman with the crowbar, and they're younger. I'm like, why didn't you go tune the guy up? But
Right.
it was 6 a.m, and they were sort of, kind of working their way. They were running down the. Anyway, I don't know. I hear you. It's a mess. Like it again. But how did we let it get this bad? And what we need to do now is try and get sort of proactive and maybe sort of help these people get to a better place, and then kind of nurture that and focus on that, right? So
100%.
I've always been a big fan of making them feel part of the society, like, so I take time and I'll stop and I'll chat with them, kind of hear their story and stuff. Because I really do believe when you feel part of something, like you go back to your school days when you felt like included in the school and you're a part of the school and you like had a school pride, you wouldn't let people mess with the school or draw on the school or pee on the school even. Like you would do something about it. And I think this homeless situation in some part is like that. The ones that are anyone who's homeless who's treated quite nice. Like there's a couple that I see sweeping the streets and taking really good care of the area. And there's others that don't. And I think we really do have to embrace them a little bit and make them feel part of Peterborough so that they feel part of the community. I think that would help.
Do you think though, pal, that even people that are, and I'm going to do the air quotes, normal members of, our community, do you think that the average normal person in our community feels tied to this community in a way that they're trying to better it for the most part? I would argue that 95% of the people that go downtown are going downtown to do their specific task and then get the fuck out of there.
I think as a whole in Peterborough, anyone who lives in Peterborough feels tied to the community and feels community oriented. Yeah. I think that it's a real community. I think
so how many people do you have?
We saw that when we just had our power outage, the big power outages. Everyone was helping each other. There were long lines. There was like 4 gas stations in like our whole area that had any kind of power because they had generators, and there were lineups like going as far as you could go. And everyone was kind and everyone was joking around and being nice to each other and letting people in front. And, the story I told you about how I got father, he went right to the cash register and no one complained. It's community. It's, once you feel a part of something, it's different. And I think that right now, the homeless people that have come don't feel a part of our community at all because, they do get ostracized and they do get ignored. And, I like Phil said, how many people walk by them like lying face down before someone goes help them?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that's the answer, but I think it would be a start for sure. Yeah.
Can I'm just realizing my phone is really low on juice, so I'm going to go get a charger and plug it in.
Sure, man.
Can you entertain yourselves for 2 minutes while I do that?
We'll entertain ourselves for, yeah, as long as it takes, man. Yeah, yeah.
I'll refresh my battery. It'll take me just a couple minutes. I'm really not well prepared at all, but just give me 2 seconds here, okay?
We passed
Take
you
your time, buddy.
all
Yeah.
good. Yeah, so I think that's where we're at. I think that we have to bring them into our community. We have to stop this revolving door of picking them up and moving them, because
Wow.
that's solving nothing. We're just moving them to another location to kick the football down the line.
I think, and we've talked about this at great length, and you know what I think, and I know
Yeah.
what you think, but
Yeah.
I think we're in a situation where you got to let these people hit that point of impact, as a wise man once told me. And if you keep picking people up and dusting them off and going, oh no, here's another situation that you can kind of mess up a little bit, that they're going to be a problem. As a landlord, I know dealing with a lot of these guys, that the financial ties that keeping these individuals into their housing is wild.
Yeah.
And that's directly related to tax revenues that are coming out of the city's coffers. And for what? Like at the end of the day, if you have a habitual non-payer of rent and it's just a revolving door, that's not good for the taxpayers. It's not good for that person. It's not good for the system. It's not good for the landlords. It's not good for a lot of things. And we have all of these systems that are put in place for people. And I'm very, hey, like I want people to be happy and successful as much as anybody. But personal accountability, there has to be some of that. That's the one thing we haven't said is that, hey, don't do the fucking drugs today. Like everyone's like, oh, we got to get them off. It's like, no, like now, like now you're done. And
yeah, but if you're in a situation where you don't know where you're going to sleep, you don't know where you're going to live, your life is miserable.
Heroin is not my issue that day. Then, like
for you and me, you're absolutely right.
Is not my issue if I can't put my head down.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. For you and me, that is not our issue. We're not addictive personalities. I'm addicted to food, but other than that, I don't have it addicted. You and I could go months without drinking and it wouldn't even bat an eye, right? We don't do any drugs. And so we also don't know what it's like to have drugs. Some of these people was a slow roll into the hard drugs, because it got harder and harder to get the drugs that weren't so hard. And so to say that you just get off, it's not as easy.
No. I understand the process of detoxing.
Yeah.
However, that needs to start. You need to do that.
But you can't detox by yourself.
So do that.
How do you detox by yourself?
Starting right now, let's go. This is the process. Do you think that the hospital would be equipped to handle a fraction of the people that were coming off narcotics in Peterborough County tomorrow?
No.
But if this is a crisis, if this is what we're calling this, if this is a crisis, then you go out and you put you cots down on the arena floor, and you rent a hall and you staff it with nurses. This is not a crisis in that sense. These are personal choices, right? Like these really are. Like this, the government treats this as personal accountability. The community needs to,
right?
The government is willing to continue to pay you to exist because you continue to consume and you pay and all those sorts of things. But if this was really a crisis in the sense that the government really truly cares, you would take action. You would go to an arena and you would shut down the ice pad and you would put beds and you would have these homeless people set up there and allow them to go through detox and medically supervise this process. There is no action. There is no action. And that's what I'm saying is that the government views this as personal accountability. However, everyone in the community is saying, oh, we need to help them. And that's where I struggle. There's no we need to help them. There needs to be that personal sense of accountability. And then the community as a whole can get behind them and move from there.
Yeah, no, it's been my experience, and I'm sure it's been Phil's experience that the people that we've helped in our past are because they bought in.
Yeah.
Like you can't help someone who's not, right, Phil? You can't help someone who hasn't bought into the program or the system or
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. You know, if these folks aren't, yeah, they ultimately have to want to change too. And I feel like, you know, what I see downtown, it's like some people have just cashed out. They're just kind of cruising around with a shopping cart full of shit. And, you know, they don't seem like, again, I don't want to profile, but you don't see a lot of like, yeah, this could be good. I'm going to, it's, yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess, you
But
know?
why though? Like, and Phil, like, I'm gonna ask you a question, pal. So when you have a situation like that, and you got, Helen, and she's got the shopping cart downtown, she's got a cat in there, and she's got enough money in her pocket to get whatever she needs that for that day, or she knows that she can walk into most businesses downtown and steal it, and no one's gonna say anything. Uh, how are we helping Helen? Like, as a community, I think that we're doing the worst thing we possibly could by continuing to enable Helen. And that's where I'm trying to find out what that next pillar that needs to
Well,
be put up.
see, here's the thing. Like, again, you know, there's no simple answer. Like, there is a thing on Facebook called Catch Car Hopper.
Right.
And this is basically like when these guys come and, you know, jack your car and steal whatever out of it, you know, you could post on there, you know, this, you know, what's happening stuff. The problem that people say, well, the police don't do anything. Well, you know, you catch somebody that's going through trying to get, you know, break into your car, and you find out they're living in a tent somewhere downtown. It's like you know, like I don't know if charging them is really that effective. Like,
No, I agree.
so you know, it again, like it's such a big problem now that we really have to sort of, you know, we have to sort of look at this proactively and how can we sort of affect a big change around the whole thing, because, you know, beating somebody up that's you know broke into your car and looted stuff or charging them, you think they're going to show up in court? Like they're living in a tent, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
yeah, see you in court. I'll be there right
Yeah.
after my morning tea. Like, forget about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's like I'm in this tent and this is where I'm living, right? So
Right. But how,
it's a
okay, well, they're living in a tent. How are they surviving in the tent?
not very well.
But that's what I'm asking. Because, like, as far as I view it, is that right in the days of direct deposit, when your check is going to be deposited, whether your ODSP's rolling in, whether the social service checks are coming in, you don't even have to be anywhere. You don't have to walk into a bank. You can smell like a foot. Nobody cares, and
Yeah,
you're gonna have that cash deposited into your account. Whereas 20 years ago, you had to go to a bank, and you had to walk in there, and they go, "ID, sir." And then you hold this up and you're like, I've been living in a tent down by the water. And they
by the
go,
river.
oh, we know. We know. But
yeah,
there was you were a part of society. There was action that needed to happen for you to get your money. Whereas
Yeah.
now we look at it and we go, money. And then they can live in the tent down by the river and put on tiny jackets for big guys.
Well, I don't even know whether sort. I don't know if you can't. I don't even think you can be an ODSP without an address. Like, so
right.
I'm not even sure. Like, someone that's homeless in a tent, I don't know if they get any sort of
No.
assistance from the government, and maybe that's probably why they're going around jacking cars. I don't know, but
What would it take for you to get an address in this town?
well, it's not easy. The cost of living is you know, try and rentals. Try and
Yeah.
rent an apartment in town. Forget it. They never have near the money to do that. Inflation went up conservatively over 6% over the last year.
Right.
There's no, like, it's easy to see why people are homeless,
Yeah. Well,
right?
so Pat and I are both landlords, and like anytime we open a room or our apartment, we have hundreds of people that come, and it's basically you choose your best. And you're right, like there's not a lot of homes, but also on the other end, Peterborough doesn't like building them. They don't like building, like they could be building proper homes that would house a lot of people that would, you know, give those. And they're also bringing tons of people in on top of it. It's kind of like a backward system. I don't know why, you know, like they seem reluctant to build high rises and structures that can house a lot of people in a small area. But then at the same time, we're bringing in like lots of people, and but have no place to house them. Like it's an interesting kind of conundrum. And as a landlord, like my bills have skyrocketed. Like my hydro is $50 more now. My gas is, I think, $60 a month more. Uh, Very soon, I have to renew, so my mortgage is going to be up there. It's gonna start being tight for me. So I understand why the prices of rent are up. Like, I don't think it's hard to see when you're not a landlord. On the other side, I was with you, you know, why are rents so high? But once you're a landlord, you're like, wow, like there's quite a cost of living.
No,
You know,
yeah, I get that, and landlords are the easiest targets. It's like, well,
yeah,
you own a home, you must be, and I get. I mean, that wasn't a. I'm just saying, like that is one of the issues, but it's yeah. I mean, you know, you've got to pay the mortgage, like you know, and if the rents don't get paid, neither does the mortgage. So, I
Right.
yeah,
just like what we've got here is a perfect storm. 2 years with this pandemic, inflation going through the roof, you know, the cost of living going way up, you know, and it's everywhere. Like education workers, you know, fighting for you know, equality. Like it's just it's kind of a drag right now. Like everything's a mess, right? And on top of all that, there's all these other things going on in the world, like the Russian Ukrainian. Like man, it's like
yeah.
that's
and
why
and
there's
the,
vodka.
and the government's response seems to be like from the truckers, their protest and QP just recently is
Yeah,
you're not going to listen to us. Well, here you go. We're going to put in a bill. We're going to ram it down your throat.
yeah,
You are going to listen to us because we say so. Because you're a
yeah.
fringe minority, or you know, you already make hundreds of thousands of dollars, which QP does not. But that's kind of how they bill it. They kind of twist what the truth is, feed it to the public, and go, okay, so now we're just going to tell them what to do. And it's kind of a weird response we're in, you know, when the pandemic maybe gave too much power, and that power went to their heads. Because ever since then, it seems like they hit everything with a hammer, like Pat likes to say. Like every nail that comes out before them, whether it's a protest or a strike or a disruption, instead of trying to negotiate, walk out there and talk to people, they want to slam them and just go, you don't have a voice. You know, we're done with you. Move on. Next. You know?
Hmm.
Well,
And
I think after all of that, you know, obviously the only thing
oh,
that's left for us to do is to have a tacky Christmas sweater party.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to lead into that, we should probably have a song. That's what everyone.
Yeah, I don't know how long you guys go with these things, but we're already up to an hour. So
Yeah. So we
I'll
need
sing
a
a song. But
yeah.
did you not want to? Do you want to? You mentioned something about a golf thing, or do you want to wait till after?
After.
After.
Okay. All right. Well, it just so happens that I have one of my guitars right here.
Now,
Wow.
do you sing with clothes on or
Oh yeah, no. I don't want to sicken people with, you know.
Well, there are some stories about bonfires that I could tell, but I'm not gonna.
That was back in the '60s. So I don't know what you guys want to hear.
Very pale, I'm just gonna say.
What's
Something
that?
live after all that depressing talk we just had. Something lively would be nice.
Something lively?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna do an original. This one's kind of mellow though, so if you wanted something lively, I might do. Maybe I'll do a cover.
Sure, if you like. Yeah.
Yeah, I did write a song about being a bus driver, and people say, my coworkers, my colleagues, they're like, "How do you write a song about that?" I said, "Well, it's it's more existential. Like it's about like the perfect day on the bus, right?
Phil, does it go the wheels on the bus?
It does. Okay, listen. Okay, I have to play it now. That's how it starts. So, I've been doing some. You were asking me if I've done stuff like this before. So, I've been doing some recruitment videos with this fantastic guy. We're trying to get more drivers to Peterborough Transit. This is another thing. Nobody seems to want to work. We
Not
need
at all.
drivers. We need drivers at Peterborough Transit, and they asked me if I do a video just to try and sort of uh, entice people into the gig. So when I was speaking to the videographer, he he asked me if I was comfortable in front of a camera, and I said, "Oh yeah, I'm a musician." And oh, what do you play? And I told him, he goes, "Well, would you do a song?" So I wrote. I was just going to do like Magic Bus by the Who, but then I thought I'll write a song, right? So I wrote this song called Bus Bound. I won't play the whole thing because it is pretty mellow, and if you go on YouTube and put in Bus Bound, you'll find it. It's already got over 100 hits. So you're lucky to be interviewing me, like big in Japan, and I'm only 5'6", right? Anyway, without further ado, I'll play I'll play a verse and a chorus, and then we'll do something more fun, and then we're going to talk about this golf thing that you guys have, right?
All right.
Okay, can you hear the guitar? Okay.
I can hear it. Sounds great.
All right, here we go. Bus Bound, written by Phil Stevenson. Shameless self-promotion. Wheels of the bus go round and round, driving through this sleepy town, and it makes that familiar sound, headed on down the road, down through streets and neighborhoods, on the promise that I'll be good, feeling really like I knew I would. In the here and now, make it be free. Welcome aboard, come ride with me. When the sun goes down, a million stars are all around. Drive through the sleepy town. Whoa, bus bound. Whoa, bus bound.
Yeah.
There you go, eh? Yeah. Anyway, there's more. If you just go on YouTube, Busbound, you'll hear it. But how about something peppier now?
I'm in.
You're in?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Well, how about something Canadian? How about the Tragically Hip?
I'm in. Yeah, that'd be great.
Boots.
Who's Hearts?
But yeah. And I used to play this with a mutual friend of ours, Jamie Bucknell. And I should give him credit. He was the one that taught me to play guitar. So this one goes out to him. Can we do it now?
Yeah.
Yeah, go.
Okay, all right, here we go. Well, I think that there's a problem here. The voice just don't sound right. Well, I let myself on an answering machine, said, backing down tonight. Well, it's been times of the wilderness, so between out and confused. Well, maybe it's raised by wolves, and I don't know exactly where they've been used. See, maybe it starts to fall apart, and it really falls apart. Like a boot's a heart, so when it starts, it really falls apart. Well, fingers and toes, 40 things we share. Well, all you want is the healing blues, the night that we don't care. Well, you locked up on Main Street, baby, for your faith parade. Well, down now, it's all out free. That thing that I made. See, when it starts to fall, I'm laying it really falls. Like a good side, so when it starts to really fall,
Woo!
there's another verse, but you know,
Nice
you
job,
get
brother.
the
That
picture.
sounded great.
That was
Thank you.
awesome. Yeah, no, that
Yeah,
probably goes back to like camping days or the around the when we go to the cottage around the fire and
Or around the bus stop.
pull out that guitar and you guys would
Yeah.
sing it out and everyone there wouldn't be a voice not heard. It was beautiful. Yeah,
Thanks.
so much fun. Yeah, no, Phil, you know what? It's been a pleasure having you here. It's loving everything you do. You're a fabulous musician. If anyone out there wants to contact Phil, go to the Phil and Glenn website, www.philandglenn.com.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you want, you have some kids, you want to do like a kid thing, they have a great puppet show. If you want to, maybe you have an elderly family member and you'd like them to enjoy some of those songs from "Won't You Come Home, Bill Bailey." I won't sing it, but from back in the day, or you just want a rowdy party, you want to live it up, and you want to sing some Irish or out there out east songs. These men are for you. And I tell you, if you go out and you can see a little bit of what they do, I checked it out earlier this week just to relive it. The St. Patty's stuff, it's still out there on YouTube. It's very cool and exciting. Phil, thanks for your talk about, like we kind of got off track with the homeless stuff, but you know what? You keep saying drop in a bucket, but a lot of the stuff that you do around the community is more than that. And the people who are receiving that food and receiving that joy that you give them is not a drop in the bucket. And the fact that you bring people together and that, they're also giving to a cause that gives them a good feeling, gives you a good feeling. And even those small acts of kindness are really changing. That's what we need in Peterborough. We need more acts of small kindnesses that change the world, bring our community together, make people feel more involved. And it's awesome.
Well, let me just say one last thing to that point. And I wanted to say this earlier, and sorry to drag this on, but you're absolutely right. So, I remember thinking there was this time when there was the Syrian crisis, and Canada was accepting Syrians over here, and I remember there was some controversy. Some people said we've got our own problems. We need to deal with our First Nations and that kind of stuff. And there's this, and I started, thinking about this was just one person's random comment. We need to do this, but then a lot of these folks wouldn't do a damn thing, right? When you say we, they're like, well, the government needs to. And I thought, if everybody just did a little something, it becomes quite a big thing. So, Glenn and I have gone up north. We work with this is an amazing organization called Arts Can Circle, and they send artists up to northern First Nations communities to volunteer for a week in schools teaching music or art or whatever. So I've gone up twice.
Nice.
It's only a week, but it's a little tiny thing. But it's like, but if everybody was doing little tiny things, and we're all doing little tiny things, it becomes one big thing, right? So you're totally right about that. I mean, I don't want to, diminish. I mean, these are things I enjoy doing, and it's just an extension of who I am. But you're totally right about that. Forget about this. When you say we need to do stuff, it's like, well, you could do. And I'm not saying I'm the guy that's done it all. I've just done a few little things, but they do add up. And if we all did those little things, boom.
No, Phil, I haven't personally known you very long. You and I, we've had a beer or two over the years, but any time that, I hear people talk about you is that it's always that you're doing those little things. So I appreciate that. Coming on here and doing this show at this hour of night, I appreciate you taking your time and spending a little bit with us and putting on a little entertainment for us. And I want to thank you. So that was fantastic. And when we get off here, we're going to chat with you a little bit farther for another 5 minutes, and we're going to talk you into some stuff. So as always, folks, Soaring Profits, thank you very much. That's a wrap for our evening. As always, you got, James over here doing his thing, myself. Let's make some money together, folks, and have a great night. Phil, this is an interesting piece that we always do with our live guys, that we have them sign off for us. So to come up with a little slogan, a sentence, a motto, or whatever. And it's kind of the only gotcha thing that we do. So this is where we stick you. You do the final send off, and then we're going to bed.
When people get off the bus, I always thank them for riding with Peterborough Transit, and I say, peace.
Peace.